Your printer jams, not a real problem, a nothing problem. A crumpled piece of paper wedged sideways in a $79 machine you bought at Walmart. You pull it out, reload the tray, hit print again. It jams again, and something inside your chest cracks open. Not because of the printer, because the printer is the last thing, because you were already trying to print out a benefits enrollment form. You don't fully understand it. For a retirement plan, you can barely afford to contribute to, and the ink cartridge alone cost you $42, which is money you mentally pulled from next week's grocery budget. And now this stupid, meaningless, trivial piece of office equipment is telling you that even the small things don't work. And for about 3 seconds, you want to pick that printer up and throw it right through the window. Not because you are crazy, but because you are fragile. Because the entire structure of your financial life is held together with tape and optimism, and a paper jam just proved it. That feeling, that white-hot flash of rage over something that costs nothing and means nothing. 3 out of every 4 Americans are carrying that feeling around right now, and most of them don't even know why. Here is why. The median retirement savings for Americans between 65 and 74 years old is $200,000. That is it. 40 years of working, saving, trying, and half of the people at retirement age right now have less than $200,000 to fund what could be 30 years of not earning a single paycheck. And 27% of Americans have saved absolutely nothing. Not a modest amount, not a number they are embarrassed by. To say out loud, $0, 0 cents, 0 plan. My name is Penny, and I spend way too much time digging through Federal Reserve data and Social Security Administration reports, so you don't have to. If you have ever opened your retirement account balance and immediately closed the app like you accidentally saw something you were not supposed to see. If you have ever Googled how much should I have saved by 35 and then wished you had not, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because what I am about to walk you through is the complete, unfiltered math behind American retirement. And I promise you, your financial advisor has never laid it out like this. $18 before car insurance, before gas, before your grandkid's birthday. Before anything breaks, anyone gets sick, or life does what life always does. That is not a retirement budget. That is a hostage situation with a checking account. And here is what really gets me. This is not about people being irresponsible. This is not a story about avocado toast or too many streaming subscriptions. This is about something I call the Great Responsibility Heist, the 40-year process by which corporations and policymakers quietly transferred all the risk of retirement from the institutions that had the money and the expertise onto individual workers who had neither. They handed you a 401k, wished you luck, and walked away. And now an entire generation is standing in line at the pharmacy, doing mental math about whether they can afford both their blood pressure medication and dinner tonight. That printed jam feeling, that crack in your chest when something tiny breaks, and your whole body says, I cannot handle one more thing. That is not weakness. That is your nervous system doing the math. Your brain refuses to do it. And today, we are going to do that math out loud. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Penny, this is depressing. But I have heard this before. Save more, spend less, start early. That is the advice, right? That is what every financial guru with a podcast and a whiteboard has been screaming for the last 20 years. And here is where I need you to really listen. Because the advice is not wrong, the advice is completely irrelevant. It is like telling someone who is drowning that they should have learned to swim. Technically accurate, but completely useless in the moment. Lie number 1. You are behind because you did not budget hard enough. This is the financial industry's favorite bedtime story. The idea that your retirement crisis is a discipline problem. That if you had just skipped the morning coffee and packed your lunch, you would be sitting on $500,000 right now. Let us do the math on that, shall we? A daily coffee costs roughly $5. That is $1,825 a year. Even if you invested every single penny of that, at 8% annual returns for 30 years, you would have about $206,000. That is it. That is the entire latte retirement plan. And it barely gets you to the median. Meanwhile, healthcare premiums alone have increased by $4,400 per each household since 2010. You could quit coffee, quit lunch, quit everything that brings you a shred of joy during your 9-hour workday, and the system would still eat those savings before you ever touch them. You are not losing to lattes. You are losing to a cost of living. That grows 3 times faster than your paycheck. Lie number 2. The stock market will save you. People love to quote the historical average return of 10%. Like it is a law of physics. But here is what they conveniently leave out. That average includes years where the market dropped 37% in a single year, like it did in 2008. And if you happen to retire in 2008 with your $200,000 in an S&P 500 index fund, you woke up one morning with $126,000 and a heart rate that could power a small generator. The stock market rewards people who have money they don't need to touch for decades. It punishes people who need their money soon. And guess which category most Americans fall into? Lie number 3. Social Security is a safety net. The average Social Security benefit is $1,976 a month. The average rent in America is $1,850. That leaves you $126 for food, medicine, electricity, and the basic biological act of staying alive. That is not a safety net. That is a napkin stretched across a canyon. Social Security was designed in 1935 as a supplement to pensions and personal savings. It was never meant to be the whole plan. But for 40% of retirees right now, it is the whole plan. Because the other 2 legs of the stool got quietly sawed off, while nobody was paying attention. Lie number 4. You just need to work longer. This one sounds reasonable until you look at the data. According to the Employee Benefit Research Institute, 48% of retirees left the workforce earlier than they planned. Not because they wanted to, because they were pushed. Health problems, layoffs, companies that decided a 58-year-old making $95,000 could be replaced by a 29-year-old making $52,000. You can plan to work until 70. Your body and your employer might have a different timeline, banking your retirement on the assumption that you will be employable, healthy, and willing to work into your late 60s. Is like building your house on a foundation made of maybes. And lie number 5, the biggest one of all, that this is your fault. That if 75% of Americans can afford retirement, then 75% of Americans must have made bad choices. Now, I know what you are going to say. Some people do make bad choices. Some people do buy things they can't afford. That is true. But when 3/4 of an entire nation is failing at the same task, that is not a character flaw. That is a system flaw. You don't look at a classroom where 75% of the students are failing and blame the students. You look at the teacher, you look at the curriculum, you look at the building that is falling apart around them, and the building is falling apart. The first mechanism is what I call the 40-year heist. In 1980, 38% of private sector workers had a pension, a real pension, the kind where you showed up, did your job for 30 years, and your employer handed you a check every month until you died. The risk was on their balance sheet. The investment decisions were made by professionals managing billions. By 2026, that number has collapsed to less than 15%. And here is the part that should make your blood pressure spike. The 401k that replaced it was never designed to be a retirement plan. It was created in 1978 as a tax shelter for executives who already had pensions. It was dessert. Corporations turned it into the entire meal, then fired the chef and handed you a recipe book in a language you don't speak. That is not a retirement plan. That is a liability dump dressed up in a benefits brochure. The second mechanism is the wage cost scissors. Since 1973, median wages adjusted for inflation have been essentially flat. A dollar earned 50 years ago buys roughly what a dollar buys today. But housing costs have exploded by 300%, healthcare by over 400%, higher education by more than 1,500%. So your paycheck is a Honda Civic trying to keep up with a Ferrari. Financial advisors tell you to save 15% of your income. But when 68% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, that 15% doesn't exist. It is not hiding under your couch cushions. It was consumed by rent increases and insurance premiums, and a gallon of milk that costs twice what it did 10 years ago. You can't save money that has already been claimed before it hits your checking account. The third mechanism is the debt trap, and this one is particularly vicious. The average student loan balance in 2026 is $40,000. People are paying these off into their 40s and 50s. Some are still writing checks in their 60s. Every dollar going to Sally Mae at 6.5% interest is a dollar that isn't compounding in your retirement account at 8%. If you spend 20 years paying off student loans, you don't just lose $40,000. You lose the $40,000 that $40,000 would have become. Over 20 years at 8%, that is roughly $186,000 in growth you never got. Then pile on credit card debt. The average household carries $7,500 at 21 to 24% interest. That is $150 a month in interest payments alone. Over 30 years invested instead at 8%. That $150 a month becomes approximately $220,000. Americans are not spending their retirement. They are paying interest on it, monthly, to banks that are posting record profits. But perhaps the most devastating mechanism is the participation gap. Even among workers who have access to a 401k, 23% don't contribute at all. And those who do, the median contribution is 6% of their salary. On a $55,000 income, that is $3,300 a year. At 8% returns over 30 years, that gets you roughly $374,000. Sounds decent until you remember that $374,000 at a 4% withdrawal rate gives you $1,247 per month. Add Social Security, and you are at $3,223. Subtract housing, utilities, food, and healthcare, and you're back to that same tiny number staring at you from the bottom of a spreadsheet that doesn't care about your feelings. Now add all of this together: flat wages, exploding costs, debt draining your investable income, a retirement system that was never built for you in the first place, and a financial industry that charges you fees on the money you do manage to save. The average 401k fee is roughly 1% per year. That doesn't sound like much until you realize that over a 40-year career, that 1% fee consumes nearly a third of your total returns. On a $500,000 portfolio, you are handing over approximately $170,000 in fees. For what? For the privilege of being told to save more by people who profit whether your account goes up or down. This isn't one problem, this is 5 problems stacked inside a trench coat, pretending to be personal responsibility. So here is the part where most videos like this pivot to hope. Here is the part where I'm supposed to soften my voice, lean into the camera, and tell you that everything's going to be okay if you just follow these 7 simple steps. I'm not going to do that because you don't need comfort right now. Because you don't need comfort right now, you need a mirror. You are not a person with a retirement problem. You are a person living inside a retirement problem. That was engineered before you were born. And the most dangerous thing you can do right now is keep pretending. The old version of you, the one who figured they'd deal with it later, the one who closed the app, the one who told themselves it would work out somehow, is going to survive what is coming. That person is already broke. They just haven't gotten the bill yet. And look, I get it. Denial is comfortable. Denial lets you sleep at night. Denial lets you swipe your card at Target without hearing a siren go off in the back of your skull. But denial compounds just like interest, except it compounds against you. Every month you spend pretending the math doesn't apply to your life is a month where the math gets worse, not a little worse, exponentially worse. A 30-year-old who waits 5 years to start investing $300 a month doesn't lose 5 years of contributions. They lose $180,000 in compound growth by 65. 5 years of denial costs you a house. 10 years costs you your dignity in a pharmacy parking lot at age 72. That is by design. The financial industry doesn't want you engaged. An engaged consumer compares fees. An engaged consumer asks why their 401k has been sitting in a money market fund, earning 1.2% for 9 years, while their provider collected management fees on money that wasn't being managed. An engaged consumer is a dangerous consumer. A checked-out consumer is a profitable one. So they made the paperwork complicated. They made the terminology opaque. They buried the fee disclosures on page 47 of a document, printed in 8-point font that reads like it was translated from legalese into slightly different legalese. They didn't build a system to help you retire. They built a system to help themselves profit from your confusion, and then hand you a quarterly statement that might as well be written in Sumerian. Here is what actually works, not what sounds good, not what gets likes on a finance bro's Instagram reel. What works? First, open your retirement account today, not tomorrow, today. Look at the balance, feel whatever you feel. Nausea, shame, rage. Let it hit you. Then look at what your money is actually invested in. If it says money market or stable value fund, and you're more than 10 years from retirement, your money is dying in a waiting room, while the stock market runs a marathon without it. Second, automate your contributions and then raise them by 1% every 6 months. You 1T, feel 1%. Your lifestyle 1T change. But over a career, that invisible escalation turns into the difference between choosing where you live at 70 and being told where you live at 70. Third, kill the highest interest debt first. Every dollar you send to a credit card at 23% interest is a dollar you're lighting on fire in front of your future self. While your future self watches from a studio apartment they can barely afford. And here is the truth. Nobody puts on a whiteboard. You are not going to budget your way to safety inside a system that was built to keep you unsafe. You are not going to outdiscipline a machine that extracts wealth from your paycheck before you ever see it. The only way out is to stop playing the game the way they taught you and start playing it the way they play it, with compounding, with time, with money that works while you sleep instead of bleeding while you work. That printer is still jammed, the paper is still crumpled, but you're not the same person who stood in front of it 10 minutes ago, because now you know the printer was never the problem.